Good afternoon, Julie and Jasmine. Today is Monday, August the 17th. We're looking at section 1-2 in the pre-calculus book. I'm going to go ahead and get into the whiteboard so I can show you the things that we talked about today. So the biggest thing we talked about, we're talking about functions, and we're looking at the concept of domain and range. So I'm going to draw the X and Y axis here. There's the X axis, there's the Y axis. We go ahead and put X here, Y here. We can go ahead and put the little arrows on it just to indicate that. Now, I'm going to draw you a graph here that starts down here at, I'll come back and put the coordinates. Well, we can put the coordinates now. This will be -8 and 10, -10. Now, we have a function. It will come up here until a point somewhere about -4 and 4. And we're going to have a hole. So we put -4 and 4. And then it will come across, it will come down, and then come back up like this. And we put an arrow on the end of it. Now, the arrow on the end of it here means it goes forever and ever in the direction up to the upper right. So if we look at the domain, so we're going to talk about the domain, and that's labeled with a capital D. And the domain is the X coordinates because D comes before R and X comes before Y. That's the way you can remember that. So the domain, I'm looking at my graph here. I start moving in from the left, and the first point I hit is this -8, -10 here point. So the coordinate, the X coordinate is -8. So that's -8, and it's a closed interval because the -8 is included. Now, as we move more to the right, we get to this point here, which is -4. Now notice there's a hole there, so that means the X value of -4 is not part of the domain. I put a union sign here, a U, and then to the right of that, I've got a -4, and I'm going off to infinity because that's what that arrow right there means, okay? Now, the range, if we come back, so the range is indicated with a capital R, and the range is the Y values. So if we start, we're coming up from the bottom here. You notice the first thing you hit is that -10, so the first thing you get in the range is the -10. And if you'll notice, as I come through, as my cursor just continues to move up in the Y direction, I get to this point here, which is -4 and 4, but there's a point over here in the first quadrant where the Y value of 4 exists. So for my range goes all the way from -10 to infinity. Now, the only other thing we talked about here, we talked about x-intercepts and y-intercepts. So if we come down here, x-intercepts is where we cross the x-axis, and that means are where y equals 0. Okay, So if I set y equals 0, I get my x-intercepts. One would be here, probably at about -6. One would be here somewhere at -2, and one would be over here. And then my y-intercepts occur my y-intercept, because I will only have one, occurs is where x equals 0, okay? Now those are the things, are the key points that we talked about today in class. So when you look at a graph, you need to be able to identify as you go left to right what your domain values are, as you come up from bottom to top what your range values are. So we will stop sharing here. Now, if you have any questions, get back with me. Tomorrow we're going to continue on section 1, 2, and we'll talk about symmetry and the concept of even or odd. If you have any questions, once again, let me know.